Greetings from Mammoth Hot Springs, and yes, that is an elk you can see there. There is always an elk herd to be seen here at Mammoth Hot Springs. Can you see that young elk off in the background over there? And I'll tell you more about that as we continue on today's tour, which takes you from Mammoth Hot Springs to Tower-Roosevelt. Hi everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Yellowstone tour. Have a look at these wonderful old buildings all around us. And then that area over there to our right actually was a parade ground. In the back you can see the terraces. We of course are at Mammoth Hot Springs, and I'm going to tell you a lot more about all of this as we continue on today's virtual Yellowstone tour. Look straight ahead of us, a little to the left. Can you see those elk taking shelter under the trees? A ranger keeping people away. And that's somebody's house. Let's carry on. We're leaving Mammoth Hot Springs and we're making our way towards Tower-Roosevelt, which is where the road to Yellowstone's northeast entrance is. And these on our left and also on our right over there are old military buildings, because this is where the army was based when they came basically to save Yellowstone. And we'll talk more about that as we continue on today's tour. We're leaving Mammoth Hot Springs behind us now, and there is always an elk herd that you'll see at Mammoth Hot Springs. They say that the Madison Valley elk herd is the only elk herd. This is a multi-denominational church. They say that the Madison Valley elk herd is the only elk herd in Yellowstone that doesn't migrate. But every single time that I've come to Mammoth, over goodness knows how many years, I've always seen the elk herd that hangs out here at Mammoth. I've never been here and not seen the elk. In order to see where we are on a map, please could you go to the following of our sites: yellowstonetours.net/map. That's yellowstonetours.net/map, and I'll drop a copy of the map in over here. If you take a look at the map, look right towards the very top. You'll see the north entrance to Yellowstone. You'll see the town of Gardiner, and if you drop down from the town of Gardiner through the north entrance, you'll get to Mammoth Hot Springs. And Mammoth Hot Springs, as I'm going to tell you more about, is the park's headquarters. And for that reason, that road, unlike most of the other roads in Yellowstone, is open on a year-round basis. If you then take a look heading more or less to the east, you'll see a road that leads down towards what's called Tower-Roosevelt or Tower Junction. And this is the road that we're on at the moment. We're making our way down towards the Tower-Roosevelt area. Off to our left over there, and coming up ahead of us, is the Gardiner River. The Gardiner River in this part of Yellowstone is interesting because it is one of the only, in fact it is the only place in all of Yellowstone where you're able to go into a hot springs. There is, you may have seen the sign there that said Gardiner River, and also a sign here that says Caution Wildlife on the roadway. And if you do come here, you'll see there's actually a beautiful view. I don't know how much of that you can see down to the Gardiner River. But I was telling you a unique aspect of this river, is that the remnants of a hot spring from Mammoth Hot Springs comes down into the Gardiner River, and they call that the Boiling River. And most years you're actually allowed to get into the Boiling River. So it's really unique because you can stand with one foot in the Gardiner River itself, and your foot may be at, I don't know, 34, 35, 36 degrees Fahrenheit, and the other foot can be in the hot spring, and it could be pretty close to boiling, hence the name Boiling River. Unfortunately, with this being the year that the coronavirus pandemic broke out, 2020, the Park Service is not allowing people into the river, which is a shame. But if you do come here and the Boiling River is open, it's a lot of fun to get in there, although you will see signs. One of them will say no nudity, and I guess that's for the benefit of our European visitors. And the other sign says caution. People have died here, and it has been over 100 years since anybody has died in the Boiling River area. But the reason they say that is that there are noxious fumes that come off many of these thermal features. And if you're sitting in the water, your head and your nose are going to be just about at the point where the fumes are coming off the river. So this is why the Park Service does caution you to be careful. I mentioned before that that the Mammoth Hot Springs area has got military significance. It's got historical significance as well. Yellowstone was founded in 1872, and when it came into being, there wasn't the National Park Service that you have today. So there really was no way to maintain law and order within Yellowstone. So a lot of people did pretty much as they wanted. There were people poaching in the park, hunting the animals and killing them. Other entrepreneurs, business people, were setting up camps and running commercial enterprises where people would come and stay in the camps for a while. And others still were using the hot springs to give people an opportunity to bathe and do their laundry, believe it or not. So all of this was going on, and there was pretty near nothing that the people who were running Yellowstone in those days could do about it. Coming up on our right, this is Undine Falls, and those are great falls. It really is a picturesque waterfall, which you can see right next to the road. It's literally maybe, 25 yard walk down from this road, and this is the Grand Loop Road, of course. So I was telling you that things were pretty much out of control here, and what happened was Congress in, I think it was 1886, and by the way, this is a really cool picnic spot. This is the Lava Creek picnic spot. Those of you who've seen several of these videos will know that one of the things I always say that you need for a great picnic spot is a river. And there you've got the Lava Creek River. And you've got trees to take shelter under what's a fairly warm day by Yellowstone standards. It's 84 degrees in the third week of July. Anyway, to get back to the story of the military at Yellowstone, in 1886, Congress would not appropriate funds to deal with law enforcement here at Yellowstone National Park. So it was decided to send the army in. And men from the 1st United States Cavalry at Fort Custer in Montana came here in 1886 under the command of a Captain Moses Harris. I'm sorry for the interruption in the video. I was telling you about the US Army, particularly the cavalry, coming to this area to save Yellowstone as they've saved the country so many times. And in a relatively short period of time from their arrival in 1886, the army sorted things out here and got rid of most of the poachers. They cut down on the illegal camps and the laundries and in the hot springs and the bathing in the hot springs, and basically saved Yellowstone until such time as 32 years later the National Park Service was established. And when the Park Service was established, shortly thereafter, there were law enforcement rangers, and they were able to keep law and order within Yellowstone. I'd also mentioned that the road that leads from Gardiner, which is the town up at the north entrance, towards Mammoth Hot Springs, the park headquarters, is one of only 2 roads in Yellowstone that is kept open on a year-round basis. And the reason it's kept open is because that is where the park's headquarters is, and you need access to it. Having said that, and I'm sorry, I know I said 2 roads, there's actually 3 roads if you divide them into virtual tours the way that we do. This road here between Mammoth Hot Springs and Tower Junction is also open on a year-round basis, and then the road between Tower Junction and the northeast entrance is open year-round as well. And the reason for that is that just on the other side of the northeast entrance, you have 2 small communities called Cooke City and Silvergate. In the summer, people who live in Cooke City and Silvergate are able to get out of their town pretty easily by heading up what's called the Beartooth Highway towards a town called Red Lodge, or going the other way over the Chief Joseph Highway towards Cody, Wyoming, and they can get services and supplies and food at lower prices than they can get in their tiny town. I mean, Silvergate is really, really tiny, and Cooke City isn't that much larger. Cooke City basically consists of one road running through the town, and it's probably, at a guess, about 150 yards long. So there really isn't a lot that you can buy there in terms of supplies or essentials or getting services. So, and then in the winter months, and unfortunately with it being July, there's just so much traffic in the park, and people are driving so slowly. I don't know if somebody thinks that they've seen something over there. But in any event, I think I may pull over here to give these cars a chance to pull ahead. Oh, I see. There's actually a vehicle up there painting the roads, so I should probably get back on the road again and just try and overtake it when possible. And you'll excuse me stopping the narration for a while. I'll just wait for this RV to pass. Looks like the road is clear. And we can continue. So I was talking about the reason that this road is kept open on a year-round basis. In the winter, the Beartooth Highway is closed. Unless you've been here in the winter, you really wouldn't appreciate just how much snow there is. I mean, snow is measured in yards here rather than in feet. And for that reason, the Beartooth Highway is closed. So the only way that people who live in Cooke City and Silvergate are able to buy the supplies that they need and to get services like driver's licenses or social security services or go see a specialist is to go out through Gardiner. and that is why this road and the next road from Tower Junction off to Cooke City is kept open on a year-round basis. Yellowstone, as you may know, has got 5 entrances, and 3 of them are in the state of Montana. So it was pretty interesting when the coronavirus pandemic first hit the US. Montana was on a lockdown for longer than Wyoming was. And Wyoming has got 2 entrances into the park, one of them being on the road from Cody, although it's 52 miles from Cody, approximately. And the other one being when you come up from Jackson Hole through Grand Teton. That entrance is also in the state of Wyoming. So Wyoming's lockdown, Wyoming shutdown, ended sooner than the quarantine and lockdown in the state of Montana. So the 2 Wyoming entrances opened a couple of weeks before the 3 Montana entrances did. And the 3 Montana entrances are those, of course, at the north entrance, the northeast entrance, and then the west entrance, which is the busiest of all of Yellowstone's entrances. And we had to wait 2 weeks for the Montana gates to open. If you have a look once again at the park map that I mentioned to you, which you can see at yellowstonetours.net/map, that's yellowstonetours.net/map, you will notice that there is a soft purple line that more or less follows the lower loop of Yellowstone. The roads through Yellowstone, as you can see, make up a massive figure of 8. And when we run our basic tours of Yellowstone, and many other tour operators do as well, we'll divide the tours into a tour of the lower loop of the figure of 8 and a tour of the upper loop of the figure of 8. And the lower loop of the figure of 8 is where most of Yellowstone's thermal features are to be found. So most of the geysers, hot springs, mud pots and fumaroles, basically the geyser basin areas, are to be found on Yellowstone's lower loop. And that is explained to some extent by that purple line that you see. That is where the caldera is. When the Yellowstone supervolcano last erupted about 640,000 years ago, it left a gigantic hole in the ground, which is known today as the caldera. And although the caldera has been filled in over the hundreds of thousands of years, that is still where the source of enormous energy is. The source of heat comes up from underground under the lower loop. And that is why you'll find most of Yellowstone's thermal features there. And the reason that I mention that is to let you know this is why we're not going to be seeing much in the way of thermal features on this stretch of road. As you've seen, the scenery is beautiful. There's a lot of forest, there's some waterfalls. We'll come across a river or 2. But the only real thermal features are those at Mammoth Hot Springs. So you're probably saying to yourself, well, Mammoth Hot Springs is outside the area where the caldera is, where the source of heat is coming up from underground. Why are there thermal features there? And that's a very good point. Scientists believe that there is an underground water canal, if you like, that runs from Norris Geyser Basin, which, funnily enough, is also just outside the caldera area, but there's an underground plumbing system that is bringing the source of heat and the water from Norris Geyser Basin to Mammoth Hot Springs. And right at the very start of this video, I believe I briefly touched on the terraces that you'll see at Mammoth Hot Springs. And those terraces are probably the most dynamic part of Yellowstone National Park. What is happening is that the thermal water is bringing up from underground a mineral called travertine. and the travertine is coming up at the rate of 1 to 2 inches a week. This is unlike the lower loop, where in the thermal features there, the mineral that for the most part is being brought up is called sinter, and the sinter is coming up at the rate of 1 inch, perhaps 1 to 2 inches every 100 years. So whereas you're getting 1 inch to 2 inches every 100 years, in Mammoth you're getting the travertine coming up at the rate of 1 to 2 inches a week. So this is a very dynamic part of the park, and the terraces for that reason are always moving. They are continually growing in some areas and dying in other areas. So if you have a look at a picture, or if you go to Mammoth Hot Springs and you look at the terraces, you'll see the gray areas, which is where the dead terraces are. Then you'll see the white area, a sign that they're either living or that is where the terraces were growing until recently. And then you'll see the terraces that are stained a golden sort of color. And those are the terraces that are in the process of evolving. You can take a tour, you can take a stroll through the terraces. There is the upper terrace area and there's the lower terrace area. The upper terrace area this year is closed off, and you can park outside where you would normally take the road through the terraces, and you can take a stroll through them and walk part of the way down towards the bottom. And then when you drive all the way down to the bottom to where Fort Yellowstone used to be, where the buildings are, where the Mammoth Hot Springs Hotel is, and the cafeteria and the gift shop, that is where you can then walk up and see the terraces from a completely different perspective. And it's always a fun thing to do when you go to Mammoth, to walk through the terraces. That and the elk herd and the fact that there's so much history in the area is what makes Mammoth Hot Springs so fascinating. I mentioned to you that this road over here is open on a year-round basis, and if you take a look, you can see how there's that cliff or hill to the side of us, and this follows the road for so much of the way. We're heading south, so that means that the hill or cliff is off to the west of us, and the result is that this road over here in the winter months is completely snow-packed. It gets really very icy, and the end result is that it becomes very treacherous in the winter months, and you find that you can slip and slide all over the place, and you have to be even more careful in the winter coming down here than I am being at the moment in the summer months. It's so easy in the winter to slide off the road, and you're so far from everything. Trying to get help is really very challenging in the winter. Having said that, if you're lucky enough to be in the Yellowstone area in the winter months, you really do want to try and get into the park. If you're at one of the gates which is closed to over road traffic, like in other words closed to buses and cars and motorbikes, for a portion of the winter you can still get in on a guided snow coach or a guided snowmobile tour. The Park Service has also started a lottery system where you can apply to bring your own snowmobiles into the park, which you used to be able to do years and years ago. You had a lot more freedom in the old days to be able to bring your own snowmobile into the park. But that was banned by President Clinton when he was running for re-election, and his decision was only partially reversed by the second President Bush when he came into office. So you're not allowed to bring your own snowmobile into the park just at your own will, but you can apply for a permit in the lottery these days. I mentioned, I think that we're now in the third week of July, and this year the permit lottery starts, I believe, on the 1st of August. And it really is fun coming into Yellowstone in the winter, especially if you can bring your own snowmobile in, because Yellowstone is absolutely deserted in the winter months. Instead of there being literally tens of thousands of people in Yellowstone, there'll only be perhaps a few hundred. So you really do have the park to yourselves, and it's a completely different experience. You won't see bears, of course, but you will see a lot of the other wildlife that Yellowstone has to offer. And if you come in from either the north entrance or the northeast entrance, it really is a prime time. And by the way, this to our right is called Floating Island Lake, and I don't really see, once again, that much of an island floating there today. But you can bring your own snowmobile, you can come into the park and come down to the Lamar Valley. And the Lamar Valley is, in my opinion, the best area in Yellowstone to see wildlife. And it certainly is the best opportunity that you have to see wolves. And particularly in the spring, you'll find the keen wolf watchers in the Lamar Valley. When you get to Tower-Roosevelt, which is the next main intersection that we're going to be coming to, and there's people obviously stopped off to the side of the road, and there's quite a bit of traffic. Unfortunately, there isn't anywhere really that I can pull over. I'm just slowing down for a moment to see, oh, there's a little black bear there, and I think I'm going to pull off to see if I can take pictures of it. So yes, there was a little black bear there, and I will drop in a video of a little bit of what I saw.
You can see the bear though if you guys pull it.
Yeah, he's just walking around.
As we continue along this road, we're not too far, probably about 3 miles or so now from the Tower-Roosevelt area. And when we turn this next corner, we're going to come to what's called the petrified tree. And I know this is a stale, boring old joke, but the Park Service fortunately put some fencing around the petrified tree so it can't escape, it can't go anywhere. And when you make it to Yellowstone, if you want to visit the petrified tree, you'll find that it is still going to be there. We see a sign here saying road closed 2 miles. This, unfortunately, is as a result of the Park Service having decided to close the road between Tower Junction and Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. That road is known as Dunraven Pass. Well, a lot of it's known as Dunraven Pass, and it really is a shame that it's closed until 2022. It's closed this year, 2020, and it's closed 2021 for that road construction. You would imagine, you would hope that there was a better way to do things, but unfortunately the period of time, and this by the way is the turnoff to the petrified tree, the period of time that the authorities have in Yellowstone to do road construction is very limited because of not only the amount of snow that we get here, but also because it is so brutally cold. And I've mentioned this in some of our other videos, but in West Yellowstone, where our office is, The temperature gets down at times to minus 50. And if you ask whether that's Fahrenheit or Celsius, it doesn't really matter. Once you're that cold, once the temperatures are that low, it's cold. I think that the temperatures, Fahrenheit and Celsius, are the same at about minus 40 or minus 41, and then Fahrenheit starts progressing a little more quickly. So the road then will be closed. The quickest way to get to, for example, to Fishing Bridge or to the east entrance or down to West Thumb would be over Dunraven Pass. But now you're not able to do it, and you have to drive all the way around. You have to go back to where we came from, which is Mammoth Hot Springs, and then go from Mammoth to Norris, and then Norris across to Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, whereas you could go straight across that road that is ahead of us. We're coming now to the Tower Junction area. This is a popular place to go horseback riding, and also for hay rides in the summers, most summers that is. And then off to our right there is the Tower Junction Ranger Station, is the Tower Ranger Station, and up ahead of us you can see once again where the road is closed. All too soon, I've come to the end of another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. Thank you so much for joining me on this virtual Yellowstone tour. If you enjoy our virtual Yellowstone tours, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Otherwise, see you in Yellowstone.